The lantern casts a small circle of warmth on the stone floor. In this softer light, familiar places take on a different quality, older and more still. Tonight we find ourselves in the world of the 14th century, for a night watch in a medieval castle town. Let the centuries fall away, sink gently into your pillow. The day is done, and you are safe to rest. Let your eyelids grow pleasantly heavy. This is quiet history. Let us begin. The iron latch clicks into place with a certain finality as the sun dips below the jagged horizon of the northern hills. A cool breeze carries the scent of damp wool and wood smoke through the narrow, winding alleys of the sleeping borough. The stone walls of the keep hold the warmth of the daylight for just a little while longer against the encroaching chill. Below the ramparts, the town holds its breath, waiting for the bells to signal the close of the market day. In the armory, the smell of oil and cold iron is thick as you reach for the lantern hanging from its rusted peg. The wick catches the flame with a small, cheerful hiss, casting long, dancing shadows against the racks of spears and padded gambesons. Your boots make a soft, measured thud against the packed earth floor as you step out into the courtyard. The stars are starting to blink through the purple haze of the twilight, marking the start of your long, quiet vigil. The gatehouse looms ahead, a weighted mass of grey granite and oak timber standing guard over the main entrance. You greet the gatekeeper with a silent nod, his face partially obscured by the flickering light of a nearby wall torch. The great portcullis has already been lowered, its iron teeth biting into the stone threshold with a sense of permanence. You check the thick hempen ropes and the wooden windlass, ensuring everything is secure for the quiet hours ahead. A narrow stone staircase winds its way up the interior of the tower, the steps worn smooth by storied years of passing feet. Each footfall echoes softly in the confined space, a lonely note in the gathering silence of the evening. Reaching the battlements, the atmosphere is sharp and clean, tasting of the coming frost and the distant pine-covered mountains. The town lies spread out below you, a tapestry of thatched roofs and timber gables fading into the gloom. A few windows still glow with the soft amber light of tallow candles or hearth fires burning low in the grates. You watch a single wisp of smoke curl lazily from a baker's chimney, drifting upward toward the pale crescent moon. The walk along the parapet is familiar, the stones underfoot uneven and weathered by 100 years of rain and snow. You run your hand along the crenellated edge, feeling the rough texture of the lichen and the cold, damp moss. To the north, the great forest is a sea of ink, its edges blurred by the rising mist from the river valley. The wind whistles softly through the arrow slits, a low, haunting melody that speaks of old stories and forgotten times. You pause for a moment to listen to the distant, lonely cry of an owl hunting in the fields beyond the outer ditch. The kingdom seems to shrink to the circle of light cast by your lantern, a small, fragile bubble of warmth in the twilight. The first round takes you toward the eastern tower, where the wall overlooks the priory and its quiet, cloistered gardens. The scent of lavender and dried herbs rises on the breeze, a sweet, unexpected gift in the middle of the stone fortress. Below the wall, the churchyard is a place of deep shadows and silvered monuments standing in silent, patient rows. The great cathedral rises beyond it, its Gothic spires reaching up like stone fingers to touch the velvet sky. You descend, a wooden ladder leading from the ramparts to the lower ward, where the stables are located. The smell of horses and dry hay is comforting, a reminder of the life that continues even in the stillness of the evening. Inside the stable, a large grey gelding snorts softly in its sleep, its breath forming a tiny white cloud in the dimness. You check the latches on the stall doors, your movements slow and deliberate so as not to disturb the resting beasts. The market square is your next destination, the wide open space now empty of the bustling crowds that filled it at noon. The wooden stalls stand like skeletons, their awnings furled and their benches overturned. For the duration of the night a stray cat darts across the cobbles, its eyes flashing green. For a second, in the glow of your lantern, it vanishes into the murk beneath a fishmonger's table, leaving the square to the wind and the shadows. The town well is a circle of worked stone in the center of the plaza, its water deep and still as a mirror. You peer into the depths, seeing the reflection of the stars dancing on the dark liquid face of it far below. You turn down a narrow lane where the houses lean in close, their upper stories almost touching across the street. The smell of stale ale and roasted meat persists near the door of the Green Dragon Tavern, now barred and silent. A small wooden sign swings overhead, its iron hinges complaining with a thin metallic scrape in the wind. You adjust the strap of your cloak, pulling the weighted wool tighter against the growing chill of the late hour. The river flows beneath the bridge. With a low, constant murmur, the water black and swirling around the stone piers. Mist rises from the exterior like a ghostly shroud, clinging to the reeds and the wooden pilings of the wharf. You walk out onto the span of the bridge, feeling the vibration of the current through the soles of your leather boots. The town looks different from here. The silhouettes of the buildings, jagged and strange against the starlit sky. Near the tannery, the atmosphere changes, becoming sharp with the smell of oak bark and curing hides in the wooden vats. It is a hard-working part of the borough, even now, when the workers have all gone to their beds. You climb back up to the main wall, the effort warming your limbs and clearing your mind in the crisp evening air. The stars have shifted their positions in the heavens, marking the passage of time with silent celestial precision. From the high vantage of the north gate, you look out over the road that leads to the distant sleeping villages. No one travels. At this hour the path a ribbon of pale grey winding through the dark and silent landscape. The silence is not empty, but filled with the small, quiet calls of the kingdom at rest and the pulse of the land. You feel a sense of peace in your role as the watcher, the one who guards the dreams of the city until the dawn. Your lantern flickers as the oil runs low, casting a warm golden glow over the time-worn stone of the parapet. You reach for your flask of oil to replenish the flame, the task a simple, familiar measure in the cycle of your shift. The city is a collection of stories, now paused, waiting for the morning to resume their busy, frantic pace. For now, there is only the wind, the stars, and the steady, reassuring beat of your own heart in the stillness. You turn your gaze toward the southern quarter where the merchant houses stand tall and proud against the fortifications. Their timber frames are intricate and grand, even in the half-light of the moon, which has now risen fully above the trees. The shadows are long and deep, stretching across the cobblestones like the fingers of a giant, reaching for the gate. You move with a quiet, steady pace, your eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement or light. The watch is a time for reflection, a chance to see the region without the noise and the distraction of the day. Every stone and every timber seems to have its own voice, whispering of the many who have stood. Where you stand now, you find yourself near the small shrine of St. Julian, the patron of travelers, its candle burning low in the niche. You pause for a moment to adjust the wick, ensuring the small light stays alive through the coldest part of the evening. The air is becoming even more still as the middle of the night approaches the wind, dying down to a faint, ghostly breath. You can hear the distant, muffled sound of the river as it continues its journey toward the sea far to the east. Your path leads you back toward the inner keep where the Lord and his family sleep behind thick stone walls. The windows are dark and silent, the only light coming from the torches that burn in the iron cressets along the main path. The transition from the outer walls to the inner ward is a shift in atmosphere from the wild open sky to the sheltered, quiet heart of the castle. You feel the weighted presence of the history that surrounds you, the layers of time built into every block of granite. As you move toward the next section of the fortifications, the shadows seem to deepen and the silence grows more profound. The stone under your feet feels solid and certain as you descend the winding narrow stairs of the tower. Each step is a familiar friend, worn smooth by the passage of countless boots over many decades. You reach the bottom where the inner ward opens, like a quiet stone bowl catching the silver light of the high moon. The atmosphere is cool and holds the faint, sharp scent of wood smoke and the damp smell of the nearby river. To your left, the armory stands in a state of quiet readiness, its thick timber doors bolted for the late hour. Through the small iron-grated window, you can see the faint glint of steel where the polearms are stacked in their racks. The iron of the spearheads looks almost liquid in the dimness, reflecting the ghost of a torch burning far across the courtyard. There is a sense of waiting in the iron, a silent patience that matches the mood of the castle at this hour. You move past the stables where the scent of dry golden hay and well-worn leather rises to meet you. Inside, a horse shifts its weight, the noise of its hooves on the wooden floor, a dull, muffled thud in the stillness. A soft, long breath follows as the animal returns to its dreams undisturbed by your quiet passing. The timber beams of the stable creak ever so slightly as they hold the weight of the hayloft above, filled with the harvest of the summer. Beyond the stables lies the small kitchen garden where the rosemary and the sage are dusted with a fine layer of frost. The silver coating makes the herbs look as though they have been fashioned from delicate lace by the hands of a winter spirit. You can smell the earth, rich and dark, beneath the cooling plants, a scent that speaks of the life that sleeps under the soil. The stone walls that surround the garden are cold to the touch, holding the chill of the evening deep within their grain. You walk toward the brewery, where the thick oak door is stained with the marks of many years of labor. The smell of fermented grain and sweet malt persists around the threshold, even though the copper vats have long since cooled. It is a dense, comforting aroma that reminds you of the warmth of the tavern and the laughter of the men after a day of hard work. The shadows here are long and still, stretching across the yard like the fingers of a time-worn memory. In the center of the courtyard, the well stands, its wooden bucket resting on the stone, coping, as if waiting for a hand to draw the water. The rope is thick and rough, coiled neatly around the spindle, its fibers stiff with the cold of the late evening. You look down into the depths, but the water is a black mirror, reflecting only a single bright star from the sky above. The silence of the well is profound, a deep quiet that seems to reach to the very roots of the castle. The smithy is quiet now, the forge a bed of grey ash where only a faint orange glow remains at the heart of the coals. The anvil stands like a solid, unyielding block of iron, its face polished smooth by the thousands of strikes it has endured. Hammers and tongs hang in their places, their shapes, distorted by the flickering light of your lantern as you pass. The heat of the day's work has vanished, replaced by the biting cold that travels through the open sides of the workshop. Your path takes you toward the edge of the tannery district, where the smell of salt and lime is carried on a faint breeze from the river. The wooden vats are dark shapes in the murk, their contents still and quiet as the leather undergoes its slow transformation. This is a place of patient waiting, where the materials of the kingdom are prepared with a cadence that has not changed for centuries. The noise of the water flowing over the nearby weir is a constant, low murmur that fills the gaps between your heartbeats. You climb the stone steps to the granary, where the timber upper floor is packed with the wealth of the local fields. The scent of dry grain is dusty and sweet, a reminder of the sun that shone upon the wheat during the harvest months. You check the heavy padlock on the door, its iron body cold and reassuringly solid in your gloved hand. The granary is the lifeblood of the town, and your presence here is a shield against the hunger that could follow any loss. The chapel stands nearby, its ornate oak doors carved with the figures of saints who watch over the sleeping city. A soft, golden glow spills from the narrow lancet windows where a few candles burn in the quiet of the sanctuary. You pause for a moment, listening to the silence of the holy place, which feels different from the silence of the streets. It is a peace that is layered with the prayers of the many who have sought comfort within these walls over the long years. You pass through the laundry yard where the large wooden tubs are empty and dry, their staves silvered by the moonlight. A few pieces of linen have been left to dry on the lines, and they snap softly in the wind like the wings of a trapped bird. The atmosphere here is clean and sharp, with the scent of lye and the cold freshness of the evening sky. The shadows of the hanging cloth dance across the cobblestones, creating a shifting pattern that follows your every step. The inner gatehouse looms ahead, its portcullis a grid of iron bars that cuts the moonlight into neat silver squares. The stone archway is thick and weighted with the history of the sieges it has weathered and the kings it has welcomed. You can hear the faint scrape of a chair from the room above, where the gate guard keeps his own quiet watch. The iron hinges of the small wicket door are greased and silent as you verify that the bolt is firmly in its place. In the corner of the yard, the bowyer's shed is a small, humble building where the scent of yew, wood and resin is thick. Stacks of seasoned wood are piled against the wall, waiting to be shaped into the longbows that defend the ramparts. A few wood shavings remain on the floor, white curls that look like fallen blossom in the dim light of your lamp. The work here is slow and precise, a craft that demands a steady hand and a quiet, focused mind. You walk past the potter's kiln, a brick dome that is still radiating a gentle warmth from the firing of the previous day. The cooling ash at the base is a soft, pale grey, and the smell of baked clay is earthy and pleasant in the chill. You can almost feel the shape of the vessels inside, the bowls and pitchers that will soon find their way into the kitchens of the town. The kiln is a heart that beats with the heat of creation, even as the rest of the kingdom rests in the cold. A small orchard is tucked away within the fortifications. Its fruit, trees standing bare and skeletal against the dark sky. The branches are silvered by the frost, and they click together in the breeze like the bones of a long-vanished age. You find a single withered apple still clinging to a branch, a small dark knot that has survived the first bite of winter. The orchard is a quiet sanctuary where the cycle of the seasons is felt, most keenly even in the middle of the fortress. The kennel is a place of soft breathing and the occasional twitch of a tail as the deerhounds hunt in their sleep. They are huddled together for warmth in the thick straw bedding, their large, powerful bodies at rest for the evening. You move with extra care here, not wanting to wake the guardians whose loyalty is as solid as the stone of the walls. The smell of the hounds is musky and warm, a living presence that fills the small wooden enclosure with a sense of safety. You cross the mason's yard, where a half-carved gargoyle stares up at the stars with eyes that are yet to be finished. The limestone blocks are pale and ghostly in the half-light, their surfaces rough where the chisel has only just begun its work. There is a sense of potential in the stone, a feeling that the city is still growing, even as it sleeps through the night. The tools are locked away, but the marks of the hammer are visible on every face of the cut masonry. The cooper's shop is the next stop on your slow journey, its interior smelling of oak staves and the iron of the hoops. Barrels of all sizes are stacked neatly against the walls, their wooden bellies full of the wine and ale of the region. The floor is covered with a thin layer of sawdust, which muffles the sound of your footsteps as you move toward the back door. The cooper's craft is one of balance and tension, a skill that keeps the wealth of the land contained and secure. You return to the high walkway, looking down at the thatched and tiled roofs of the town which stretch away in the dimness. The chimneys are silent now, the smoke of the evening fires having long since faded into the clear night air. The city looks like a collection of small dark islands in a sea of silver moonlight, each one holding a family and a story. You feel a deep connection to the people below, a responsibility that weighs upon you with a gentle, persistent pressure. Finally, you approach the guardroom entrance where the iron brazier outside the door crackles with a small orange flame. The warmth of the fire is a sudden, welcome touch against the skin of your face, which has grown numb in the cold. You pause for a moment to warm your hands, the light of the embers dancing in the polished surface of your breastplate. You turn toward the narrow, winding alleyways that lead to the lower town, where the heartbeat of the city is felt even in the deepest slumber. The descent into the lower town is a journey into a different, more intimate layer of the city's existence. The streets here are narrower, the timber-framed houses leaning toward one another as if sharing secrets in the dimness. Your boots make a dull thudding noise on the packed earth and cobblestones, a steady measure that marks your progress. The smell of damp wood and chimney soot is stronger here, trapped by the close proximity of the buildings. You pass the weaver's cottage, where the great wooden loom stands like a silent giant in the front room. The shuttle is at rest, and the threads of wool are taut and expectant, waiting for the first light of morning. The atmosphere inside is thick, with the smell of raw fleece and the faint, dusty aroma of vegetable dyes. You can almost feel the ghost of the day's labor, the tireless back and forth of the weaver's hands. Further down the lane, the tannery reveals itself by the sharp, pungent scent of oak, bark, and curing hides. The large vats are hidden in the shadows, but the moisture in the atmosphere clings to your cloak as you pass by. It is a place of transformation where the raw and the rugged are turned into something supple and enduring. The water in the nearby stream murmurs a low, constant song as it carries away the remnants of the day's toil. You reach the town, well, a sturdy stone structure that serves as the heart of this neighborhood. The wooden bucket rests on the edge of the wall, its iron bands glinting in the faint starlight that reaches down between the roofs. A few stray drops of water fall from the bottom of the bucket, making a soft ringing note as they hit the surface of the pool below. It is a small, solitary chime in the middle of the quiet city. The apothecary's garden is a tangle of silver leaves and dark stems tucked away behind a low stone wall. The scent of rosemary and lavender is a sudden sweet relief rising from the damp earth as the frost begins to form. You recognize the jagged shape of motherwort and the soft velvet leaves of sage even in the half-light. These plants are the quiet healers of the town, waiting in the shadows to be gathered and brewed into remedies. Beyond the garden, the watermill stands its great, wheel dripping and silent for the first time since sunrise. The smell of ground, grain, and wet timber hangs in the atmosphere, a comforting earthy presence that speaks of plenty. The mill race continues to flow with a steady, rushing cadence, a reminder of the tireless energy of the river. You pause to listen to the water, feeling its strength even in the stillness of the late hour. The church of St. Jude rises from the center of the lower town, its spire reaching toward the heavens like a silent prayer. The stone porch is a place of deep shadow where the carvings of saints and angels seem to watch over the sleeping parish. The wood of the doors is old and weathered, its grain standing out like the veins on an aged hand. You feel a sense of peace here, a sanctuary that exists outside the passage of time. You walk along the river bank, where the mist rises in thin white ribbons from the dark water. The reeds rustle softly as the breeze moves through them, a sound like the dry whispering of old parchment. A lone heron stands motionless in the shallows, a silver statue waiting for a ripple that never comes. The river is the lifeblood of the city, a moving road that connects this place to the wider landscape. The tanner's pits are dark mirrors reflecting the sliver of the moon that hangs high above the battlements. The water within them is still and weighted with the minerals of the earth and the tannins of the trees. It is a slow, patient process, a craft that requires time and the steady hand of the seasons. You move past with a quiet respect for the work that is done in the shadows. The stables of the Merchants' Guild are filled with the soft sounds of horses shifting in their stalls. The smell of sweet hay and warm leather is a familiar, comforting presence that fills the long wooden building. You hear the low huff of a mare as she dreams of green pastures and the open road. The horses are the engines of trade, their strength the foundation of the city's wealth. At the gatehouse of the lower town the great iron chains hang, motionless their links, cold to the touch. The portcullis is down, its wooden teeth biting into the stone of the threshold, a formidable barrier against the outside. The guard on the other side is a mere shadow, his presence felt rather than seen in the dimness. You exchange a silent nod, a shared understanding of the watch that keeps the city safe. The baker's oven is still radiating a gentle, fading heat that warms the stones of the alleyway. The smell of toasted crust and rising dough remains in the atmosphere, a ghost of the morning's preparations. A few embers glow deep within the hearth, like the eyes of a slumbering beast in its cave. The baker will be the first to wake, stirring the fires before the sun has even cleared the horizon. The chandler's shop is a place of pale wax and yellow tallow, its windows frosted with the breath of the evening. The scent of honey and rendered fat is a thick, rich aroma that clings to the wooden doorframe. Rows of candles hang from the ceiling like white icicles, waiting to bring light into the homes of the town. It is a quiet, necessary trade that keeps the shadows at bay long after the sun has set. You cross the cobbled square, where the market stalls stand empty and skeletal in the moonlight. The stone fountain in the center is silent, its water turned off for the winter months to prevent the pipes from freezing. The space feels immense and hollow, a contrast to the crowded, bustling energy of the daylight hours. You are the only living thing in this wide open space, a solitary figure in a landscape of stone. The potter's wheel is a wooden disc at rest in the corner of a small mud-brick workshop. A half-formed bowl sits upon it, the clay still damp and grey, under a protective piece of wet linen. The smell of wet earth and wood smoke is a grounding presence, a reminder of the simple materials that build a life. The potter's hands have left their mark on the clay, a physical record of a day's quiet achievement. The fishmonger's stall is scrubbed clean, the wooden boards damp and smelling faintly of salt and the sea. A few empty willow baskets are stacked. In the corner their woven sides, silvered by the frost. The river provides a steady supply of trout and eel, a harvest that sustains the people through the long winter. You can almost hear the calls of the sellers echoing in the silent square. You reach the bridge over the moat, where the water is a dark, unmoving sheet that hides the depths below. The stone arches are cold and damp, their surfaces covered with a thin layer of green moss. You look down at your reflection, a fleeting shadow in the water that vanishes with the slightest ripple. The bridge is a link between the safety of the walls and the uncertainty of the world beyond. A small shrine is tucked into a niche in the wall, where a single tallow candle gutters in the breeze. The light is a fragile golden flower blooming in the middle of the grey stone and the deep shadows. Someone has left a small bundle of dried herbs, an offering for a safe journey or a quick recovery. It is a quiet, personal moment of faith in the middle of the great, indifferent city. A stack of firewood is piled neatly against the wall of a small, humble cottage, its edges sharp and clean. Each log is a promise of warmth, a safeguard against the biting chill of the December evening. The wood is seasoned and dry, its scent a sharp, resinous note that cuts through the damp atmosphere. You feel a sense of satisfaction in the order and the preparation that this woodpile represents. You find the narrow stone stairs that lead back toward the upper town, their steps worn into smooth hollows by centuries of use. Each step is a slow, deliberate effort, a climb that takes you away from the intimate life of the lower streets. The city is a layered place, a collection of different worlds, all existing together under the same moonlit sky. You reach the top of the stairs, your breath misting in the chill as you look out over the roofs. Once more, the stone path of the ramparts stretches out before you, a pale ribbon in the silver glow of the high moon. Your footsteps are a soft scraping on the grit and sand that has gathered in the crevices of the masonry. To your left, the battlements rise like jagged teeth against the star-strewn sky, offering glimpses of the sleeping fields beyond. The landscape is a tapestry of greys and blacks, where the distant woods are a solid wall of shadow. You reach the entrance to the armory, where the thick oak door stands, slightly ajar, its iron hinges weeping streaks of rust onto the threshold. Inside, the atmosphere is cool and smells of linseed oil and cold metal, a sharp metallic tang that catches in the throat. Racks of poleaxes and spears stand in the dimness, their ash shafts smooth and worn by many hands. A single lantern hangs from a beam, casting long dancing shadows that stretch across the floor and up the rough stone walls. In the corner, a pile of chainmail shirts lies on a wooden bench, their interlocking rings glinting like the scales of a fish. Each ring was closed by hand, a labor of thousands of tiny hammer blows that now rest in silence. The weight of the mail is palpable, even in the stillness, a burden of protection that waits for the morning light. You run a finger over the links, feeling the cold, unforgiving strength of the iron and the grease that keeps the rust at bay. The stables are a cavern of warmth, and the low, rhythmic breathing of the great horses that rest within the stalls. The scent of dry hay and leather is thick here, a comforting, earthy musk that speaks of honest toil. A horse shifts its weight in the straw, the dull thud of a hoof echoing softly against the timber partitions. You can see the mist of their breath rising in the lantern light, a gentle sign of life, in the heart of the stone fortress. Each stall is a private sanctuary where the animals find respite from the labors of the day, their coats brushed clean and their bellies full. The leather harnesses hang from wooden pegs, their brass buckles polished to a dull shine that catches the flickering flame. There is a sense of mutual trust in this place, a bond between man and beast that has been forged over many centuries. You linger for a moment, listening to the quiet crunch of a horse chewing on a stray piece of clover. The granary is a tall, narrow building, with thick walls designed to keep the precious harvest dry and safe from the damp. The floor is covered with a fine dust of flour and chaff which muffles your steps as you walk between the towering bins. The smell of dried grain is sweet and dusty, a scent that reminds you of the golden fields of August and the heat of the sun. Thousands of bushels of wheat and barley are stored here, a vital reserve that ensures the survival of the town through the lean months. You notice a small wooden shovel leaning against a bin, its handle polished smooth by the friction of constant use. The grain flows through your fingers like liquid gold, a cool and shifting mass that feels strangely alive. This is the lifeblood of the community, the result of countless hours of ploughing, sowing, and reaping in the open fields. It is a quiet treasure house where the wealth of the land is guarded by stone and lock. The gatehouse is a place of constant vigilance, where the heavy iron portcullis hangs, suspended like a frozen waterfall. The winch and chains are greased with animal fat, their massive links cold to the touch in the midnight chill. A small fire smoulders in the hearth of the guardroom, providing a meager warmth that barely reaches the corners of the chamber. You can see the marks of many years on the stone walls, where guards have carved their names or simple tallies of the passing hours. The herbalist has a small walled garden tucked away behind the infirmary, where the plants are now dormant under a blanket of frost. The lavender and rosemary are brittle and grey, their scent reduced to a faint ghost of their summer glory. You walk along the narrow gravel paths, the frozen stones crunching under your soles like breaking glass. This is a place of healing, where the secrets of the earth are gathered and dried to mend the broken bodies of the townspeople. A row of ceramic pots sits on a stone ledge, each one containing a different dried root or leaf labeled with careful script. The smell of dried mint and earthy valerian hangs in the still atmosphere, a sharp and medicinal fragrance. You feel the peace of this garden, a quiet corner of order and knowledge in a world that can often be harsh and unpredictable. The frost has turned the dead stalks into delicate sculptures of ice that glitter in the faint moonlight. The weaver has left her workshop for the evening, but the great wooden looms still stand like silent sentinels in the shadows. The room is filled with the scent of raw wool and vegetable dyes, a complex aroma of onion, skins, and crushed madder. A half-finished piece of cloth is still stretched on the frame, the intricate pattern of threads, a testament to a day of focused effort. The shuttle rests on the bench, its boxwood body worn to a satin finish by the constant movement across the warp. Baskets of colourful yarn are stacked against the wall, their hues of deep blue and vibrant red muted in the low light. Each thread is a story of spinning and dyeing, a slow process that transforms the fleece of a sheep into a garment of warmth. The silence here is profound, a pause in the industrious pulse of the workshop that will resume with the first light of dawn. You can almost hear the rhythmic clatter of the treadles echoing in the empty space at the edge of the town. The tannery sits near the running water of a small stream, its presence marked by a sharp and pungent odor. The large wooden vats are filled with tanning liquor, their surfaces dark and unreflective in the dimness. Hides are stretched on wooden frames, their surfaces being transformed from raw skin into durable leather. It is a difficult and unpleasant task, but one that provides the boots and saddles that the city depends upon for its daily life. In a quiet courtyard, a stone well stands, its wooden bucket resting on the coping stones which are worn into deep grooves by the rope. The water far below is a dark and secret mirror reflecting a single star that shines down through the opening. You can feel the coolness rising from the depths, a refreshing breath of the earth itself. This well has quenched the thirst of generations, a reliable source of life that never fails even in the height of summer. The laundry area is a collection of large stone troughs where the water has frozen into thick, opaque slabs of ice. The smell of lye and wood ash still persists in the damp atmosphere, a reminder of the back-breaking work of washing. Wooden paddles and scrubbing brushes are laid out to dry, their bristles stiff with the cold. It is a stark and functional place where the cleanliness of the household is maintained through sheer physical effort. A small chapel for the garrison is nestled into the base of the main tower, its interior, a sanctuary of flickering candlelight and cool stone. The altar is covered with a simple linen cloth, and a small iron crucifix stands in the center of the space. The smell of beeswax and old incense is a comforting presence, a link to the spiritual life that underpins the medieval world. You feel a sense of reverence in this small, quiet room, a place where a soldier can find a moment of peace before the dawn. The cooper's yard is filled with the skeletons of barrels, their oak staves held together by temporary iron hoops. The scent of toasted wood and resin is strong here, where the staves are heated over small fires to bend them into shape. Each barrel is a masterpiece of precision designed to hold wine or ale without losing a single drop. You can see the shavings of wood on the ground like pale curls of hair resting in the dark shadows. You walk down a narrow alleyway where the upper stories of the houses lean toward each other, almost touching overhead. The space is a tunnel of shadow where the only light comes from the occasional candle in a high window. The timber frames of the buildings creak in the wind, a low and rhythmic sound that feels like the breathing of the city itself. It is an intimate and secret place, where the private lives of the citizens are tucked away behind thick wooden doors. The perimeter of the castle keep is a massive wall of hewn stone, its surface cold and imposing in the moonlight. You look up at the high windows, where the Lord and his family sleep, their safety guaranteed by the strength of these fortifications. The history of the town is written in these stones, each one placed with care and purpose to endure for 1,000 years. You feel small in the presence of such enduring power, a passing shadow in the long story of this place. The guardroom is a scene of quiet transition as the men of the middle watch, prepare to take their posts on the walls. They speak in low murmurs, their voices a soft background to the crackle of the fire and the clink of their gear. You feel the warmth of the room as you pass a brief respite from the biting chill of the December night. The transition is seamless, a measure of the discipline and the routine that keeps the town safe while its people sleep. You step away from the warmth of the guardroom, feeling the immediate bite of the frost upon your cheeks. The stone corridor is narrow, lit only by the occasional iron cresset that sputters with a dying flame. Your boots make a soft, muffled thud on the rushes that have been scattered across the floor to catch the damp. The armory door creaks as you push it open, revealing a chamber filled with the scent of cold iron and grease. Here, the tools of the garrison are kept in careful order, resting upon wooden frames that line the walls. You see the glint of 100 mail shirts, each link hand-forged and oiled to prevent the rust from taking hold. The helmets are arranged in rows, their smooth surfaces mirroring the flicker of your lantern as you pass. It is a quiet place where the labor of the blacksmith is held in a state of silent readiness. You can almost feel the presence of the men who wear this gear, their lives protected by the strength of the steel and the skill of the maker. Bundles of arrows are stacked neatly in willow baskets, their fletchings of goose feather soft to the touch. Each shaft is straight and true, tipped with a barbed head of forged steel that feels icy to the hand. There is a sense of dormant power here, a collection of objects waiting for a call that everyone hopes will never come. The granary is a different landscape entirely, filled with the dry, dusty scent of threshed wheat and rye. The wooden bins are piled high with the harvest, a golden treasure that represents the survival of the town through the lean months. You hear the tiny, frantic scratching of a mouse behind a board, a small life seeking warmth and food in the stillness. The atmosphere in the storehouse is thick with the smell of burlap and dry earth. Each sack is tied with a rough twine, its contents a promise of bread for the coming weeks of winter. You place a hand on the cool wood of a bin, feeling the density of the grain that lies within, a weighted silence that speaks of abundance. You move toward the stables, where the air is filled with the rich, earthy smell of hay and the warmth of living animals. The horses stir in their stalls as you pass, their breath rising in white clouds that catch the dim light. You hear the slow, rhythmic grinding of teeth as a mare chews on a mouthful of dry clover. The straw on the floor is thick and golden, providing a soft bed for the beasts that serve the castle. Each stall is a private sanctuary, where the animals find rest from the labors of the day. You feel a sense of companionship in this place, a shared existence between the humans and the creatures that support them. The mews is a place of absolute quiet, where the lord's hawks are kept on their perches. The birds are hooded, their sharp talons gripping the leather-covered wood with a strength that is both graceful and terrifying. You can smell the faint scent of feathers and the clean, sharp aroma of the cedar shavings on the floor. There is a peculiar dignity to these birds even in their sleep, as they wait for the morning hunt. The atmosphere is one of focused calm, a sharp contrast to the bustling activity that fills this yard during the daylight hours. You move quietly, careful not to disturb their rest as you make your way toward the gatehouse. The machinery of the gatehouse is a marvel of medieval engineering, a collection of massive wooden winches and iron chains. These are the muscles of the castle, capable of raising the portcullis or lowering the drawbridge with a grinding effort. The wood is dark with age and grease, polished by the hands of the men who have operated it for decades. You look at the thick links of the chains, each one as large as a man's hand, forged to withstand the greatest of pressures. There is a weighted gravity to this place, a realization of the immense force required to protect the entrance to the kingdom. The stillness is punctuated only by the occasional drip of water from the stone ceiling. The spiral staircase that leads to the battlements is narrow and steep, the stone steps worn into smooth hollows by generations of feet. You run your hand along the central pillar, feeling the cold, rough texture of the masonry. The climb is a slow, deliberate process, each step bringing you higher into the chill of the evening. The torchlight flickers against the damp walls, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to follow you up the tower. There is a sense of enclosure here, a private world of stone and shadow that feels separate from the rest of the town. You reach the top and step out onto the wall walk, where the wind greets you with a sharp, refreshing embrace. From this height, the town below is a collection of dark shapes and flickering lights, tucked safely behind the curtain walls. You can see the thatched roofs of the houses, dusted with a fine layer of frost that gleams in the moonlight. The marketplace is empty, its stalls like skeletal remains in the center of the square. The silence of the town is profound, a deep and enduring peace that seems to blanket the entire region. You look out toward the horizon, where the dark line of the forest meets the pale wash of the starry sky. There is a measureless quality to the landscape, a sense of time-worn endurance that transcends the passing of the hours. The well in the inner courtyard is a silent sentinel, its wooden roof capped with a layer of white rime. The rope is stiff with ice, and the bucket rests upon the stone ledge, waiting for the first light of dawn. You can hear the faint, distant murmur of the river as it flows past the castle walls, a constant pulse in the quiet. The buttery is a place of cool shadows and the sweet, fermented smell of ale and cider. Rows of barrels are stacked against the walls, their oak staves held tight by iron hoops that glint in the half-light. It is a functional and necessary space where the liquid sustenance of the garrison is stored with care. You pass the kitchen hearth, where the embers of the day's fire still glow with a soft orange light. The smell of roasted meat and wood smoke persists in the atmosphere, a lingering memory of the evening meal. The large iron pots are cleaned and stacked, ready for the early start of the cooks in the morning. The solar exterior is decorated with intricate stone carvings, their details softened by the dimness of the late hour. You can see the outlines of mythical beasts and floral patterns, a testament to the artistry that exists even in this fortress. The windows are dark, the lord and his family resting in the security of their high chambers. The chapel exterior is a vision of grace, its stained glass windows reflecting the pale light of the moon. You can imagine the quiet sanctuary within, where the smell of beeswax and old incense remains a comforting presence. It is a place of spiritual refuge, a link to the divine that provides a sense of order to the medieval era. The outer ward gate is guarded by a single man, his figure a motionless silhouette against the grey stone. He acknowledges your presence with a slight nod, a silent recognition of the shared duty that keeps the town safe. You feel a sense of solidarity with him, two shadows moving through the long story of this place. The blacksmith's forge is cold now, the anvil standing like a silent monument in the center of the workshop. The smell of coal dust and burnt iron still hangs in the chill, a reminder of the heat and noise that fill this space during the day. The tools are laid out in precise order, their edges sharp and ready for the next day's labor. The tanner's yard is a place of stark utility, where the vats are covered with frost-rimed wooden lids. The pungent scent of the tanning liquors is muted by the cold, but it remains a distinctive marker of this industrial corner of the castle. You move quickly past, your nose twitching at the sharp, acidic tang that persists even in the winter. You look over the battlements toward the river, where a thin mist is rising from the dark water. The trees along the bank are silvered with frost, their branches like delicate lace against the pale sky. It is a scene of immense beauty and stillness, a moment of reflection in the middle of your watch. The portcullis hangs above the main entrance, its iron spikes a formidable barrier to any who would seek to enter unbidden. You look at the heavy timber of the gates, reinforced with iron straps and massive bolts that have stood for 100 years. The strength of the castle is visible in every detail, a physical manifestation of the power of the kingdom. A small wooden bench sits in a sheltered nook of the lookout post, where a guard might find a moment's rest. You sit for a second, feeling the cold of the wood through your woolen cloak, and listen to the sounds of the evening. The wind whistles through the crenellations, a low and mournful note that seems to speak of the ages. The path leading toward the high tower is a series of stone steps, each one a testament to the labor of the masons. You turn your gaze toward the high tower, where the watchman's horn hangs ready, and the path upward beckons with the promise of a wider view. The spiral staircase of the high tower is narrow, the stone steps worn smooth by centuries of ascending guards. Your boots make a soft, measured scrape against the limestone, a lonely echo in the vertical tunnel of the masonry. The chill of the rock seeps through your gloves, a reminder of the mountain of stone that supports this high vantage point. Each turn brings you higher, the atmosphere cooling as you leave the warmth of the lower halls behind. You feel the weight of the castle in every step, a physical manifestation of the history that resides within these walls. You reach a small landing, where a single arrow slit allows a sliver of moonlight to pierce the gloom. Looking through the narrow gap, you see the town spread out like a map of silver and shadow. The thatched roofs of the cottages are dusted with white. looking like sleeping animals huddled together for warmth. The river is a ribbon of lead, winding its way through the landscape toward the distant unseen sea. The stillness is profound, a moment of reflection as you survey the kingdom you are sworn to protect. Descending once more, you move toward the great granary, a massive timber-framed structure that holds the lifeblood of the castle. Inside, the smell of dry barley and dusty wheat is thick and sweet, a comforting scent of plenty. Huge oak bins are filled to the brim, their contents a golden treasure guarded against the hunger of winter. You hear the tiny, frantic scratching of a mouse behind a crate, a small life seeking a share of the bounty. The air is dry and still, preserving the harvest for the months ahead. The beams overhead are massive, hewn from old oaks that grew when the kingdom was young. They are dark with age and the smoke of many winters, supporting the weight of the roof with effortless strength. You run a hand over the rough-hewn wood, feeling the grain and the marks of the adze that shaped it. There is a sense of permanence here, a feeling that this building will stand as long as the stone walls themselves. The granary is a testament to the labor of the fields, a quiet storehouse of survival. Next, your path takes you to the armory, where the tools of defense are kept in silent readiness. The atmosphere here is different, metallic and sharp, with the underlying scent of linseed oil and cold iron. Rows of polearms stand like a frozen forest, their steel heads gleaming faintly in the light of your lantern. Shields hang upon the walls, their painted crests faded, but still proud, telling stories of lineages and lineages long past. It is a room of potential, a quiet storehouse of the town's protection. A rack of swords sits in the corner, their hilts wrapped in leather and wire, waiting for hands that are currently at rest. You do not touch them, respecting the lethal purpose they serve, but you appreciate the craftsmanship in their balance and form. The silence of the armory is profound, a weighted stillness that speaks of the peace brought by the readiness for conflict. Each blade is a piece of art, forged in fire and tempered in water, now resting in the dimness. The room feels full of history, every piece of mail and every helmet a witness to the passage of time. Moving outside, you cross the courtyard to the stables, where the warmth of living creatures offers a welcome change. The smell of horses, hay, and well-oiled leather is rich and earthy, a sensory tapestry of animal life. You hear the soft, steady breathing of the great destriers, their massive forms shifting slightly in the straw. A horse nickers softly as you pass, a gentle greeting in the quiet hours. The heat of their bodies creates a microclimate of comfort in the freezing night. The tack room is a clutter of bridles, saddles, and stirrups, all hanging from wooden pegs in organized chaos. The leather is supple and dark, well maintained by the grooms who labor here during the daylight. You can see the glint of brass buckles and the dull sheen of iron bits, each piece a vital link between man and beast. The smell of saddle soap and neatsfoot oil lingers, a clean and industrious scent. It is a place of preparation where the tools of the rider are kept in peak condition. You climb the ladder to the hayloft, where the scent of dried clover is even stronger, a memory of summer preserved in the stalks. The hay is piled high, a soft and fragrant mattress for any groom who might be sleeping nearby. From this height you can look out through the hay door at the stars, which are bright and piercing in the clear, cold sky. They seem to pulse with a slow measure, a celestial clock marking the passage of your watch. The loft is a peaceful sanctuary, a place of rest above the busy stalls. Back on the ground, you follow the line of the outer wall, where the stones are rough and weathered by the elements. The mortar is crumbling in places, but the sheer mass of the fortification is reassuring, a physical barrier against the unknown. You pass a torch flickering in an iron bracket, its orange flame dancing in the breeze and casting long, erratic shadows. The wood pops and crackles, a small, lively noise in the quiet of the fortress. The wall is a silent sentinel, standing guard over the town for generations. The town well sits in the center of the square, its stone coping rimmed with frost that sparkles like diamonds. You look down into the depths, seeing the reflection of a single star in the still dark water far below. The bucket hangs from its chain, swaying slightly in the wind with a faint metallic clink. This is the heart of the community, the place where news is shared and water is drawn. Now empty and still, the water below is cold and pure, a hidden treasure in the center of the stone. Nearby, the baker's oven is a hulking shape of clay and brick, still radiating a faint residual heat from the day's baking. The smell of charred wood and toasted flour persists, a ghost of the loaves that fed the town only hours ago. You imagine the baker rising before the sun, his hands white with flour as he kneads the dough for the morning. For now the oven is a quiet monument to the daily labor that sustains life. The warmth it provides is a small comfort in the midnight chill. A stack of firewood is piled neatly against a nearby wall, the logs split and seasoned, ready for the hearths of the great hall. The bark is rough and peeling, the wood showing the pale rings of its growth and the clean cuts of the axe. It is a simple thing, but essential, a store of energy that will bring light and warmth when the day returns. You appreciate the order of the stack, a small sign of the discipline that governs this place. Each log is a promise of a future fire. In the laundry area, the large wooden tubs are empty, their staves drying in the cold air. Frozen puddles of soapy water lie on the cobblestones, white and opaque like spilled milk. The smell of lye and wet wool has faded, replaced by the neutral scent of the frost. It is a functional space, stripped of its daytime bustle, leaving only the utilitarian tools of the washerwomen. The silence here is a sharp contrast to the splashing and chatter of the daylight hours. You reach the gatehouse, where the massive winch mechanism for the portcullis is housed in a timber frame. The iron gears are coated in thick grease, their teeth interlocking with a precision that seems almost modern. The tension in the chains is palpable, a coiled strength that holds the heavy gate in place. You check the locking pins, ensuring that everything is secure and that the town remains sealed against the world. The gatehouse is the throat of the castle, a narrow passage that controls all entry. From the top of the gatehouse, you look out over the thatched roofs of the lower town, which cascade down the hill like stone steps. The chimneys are mostly cold, though a few still send up thin ribbons of blue smoke that vanish into the dark. The streets are narrow and winding, a labyrinth of shadows that only the locals truly know. You watch for any sign of movement, any flicker of an unauthorized light, but all is peaceful. The town sleeps under your gaze, a community at rest. The herb garden of the castle is a small walled sanctuary where the plants are now dormant under a layer of mulch. You can still smell the faint resinous scent of rosemary and the sharp tang of dried lavender clinging to the stalks. The frost has turned the garden into a silver fantasy, every leaf and twig coated in a delicate crust of ice. It is a place of healing and flavor, a quiet corner where nature is tended with care. The garden is a green heart in the center of the grey stone. A wooden cart sits abandoned in a narrow alley, its wheels half sunk in the frozen mud of the track. It looks weary, as if it has traveled many miles over rough roads to bring goods to the market. The wood is grey and weathered, the iron rims of the wheels worn thin by years of use. It is a humble object, but it represents the commerce and movement that connect this castle to the wider kingdom. The cart is a silent witness to the trade and travel of the era. The cathedral spire looms above the town, its Gothic arches and stone carvings lost in the upper reaches of the gloom. The shadow it casts is long and pointed, a finger of stone marking the passage of the moon across the sky. The bells are silent now, their bronze tongues stilled until the morning call to prayer. You feel the weight of the structure, a massive expression of faith that dominates the skyline. The cathedral is a spiritual anchor, a constant presence in the changing years. A small shrine is built into the niche of the wall, where a single candle gutters in a horn lantern. It is a place for a quick prayer or a moment of reflection for the guards on their rounds. The smell of melting tallow is faint but distinct, a humble offering in the face of the immense night. You pause for a second, acknowledging the small light before continuing your journey toward the final stretch of the wall. The candle is a spark of hope in the vastness of the dark. The horizon is still dark, but there is a subtle change in the quality of the light, a hint that the deepest part of the watch is passing. You look toward the east, where the stars seem to be fading slightly, though the sun is still hours away. Your pace is steady, your senses sharp, as you move toward the next tower to meet the relief guard. The cycle of the watch continues, a measured tempo of duty and observation that keeps the town in its peaceful rest. You turn your eyes once more to the distant hills, where the first breath of the coming dawn begins to stir the sleeping landscape. The stone steps of the western gatehouse are worn smooth by the passage of 1,000 boots through the long decades of this fortress. Your lantern casts a flickering amber glow against the damp masonry, where moss clings to the mortar in the deep crevices. Every footfall is a soft padded echo that travels up the spiral staircase and loses itself in the rafters above. You pause on the landing, feeling the chill of the masonry seep through your leather gloves. This part of the wall is older, built from granite hauled from the northern quarries 3 generations ago. The iron portcullis hangs above the entrance, a jagged set of teeth suspended by thick, greased chains. You can smell the metallic tang of the wrought iron, mixed with the scent of old grease and the dampness of the earth below. It is a formidable barrier, designed to keep the dangers of the realm at bay, while the townspeople sleep in their beds. You move toward the inner bailey, where the stables are situated, tucked against the warmth of the kitchen wall. The scent of dry hay and warm manure greets you in the dimness, a familiar and comforting smell of the countryside. Inside, a great warhorse shifts its weight, the straw crunching beneath its hooves as it exhales a long, misty breath into the cold. The horses are quiet, their large, dark eyes reflecting the tiny flame of your lamp as you pass their stalls. You reach out to touch the rough timber of a partition, feeling the grain of the oak, which has been polished by the friction of many shoulders. There is a sense of strength here, a dormant power that waits for the light of the coming morning. Further along, the granary stands as a silent sentinel, its timber-framed walls bulging slightly under the weight of the autumn harvest. The smell of dust and dried grain is thick, a dry, sweet perfume that speaks of hard work and the bounty of the earth. You check the heavy padlocks on the doors, ensuring the village's survival is secure against the hunger of the winter. A small cat darts across the courtyard, a shadow among shadows, hunting for the mice that dare to stir in the quiet hours. Its movements are fluid and silent, a reminder that even in the stillness, the cycle of life continues its patient measure. You watch it vanish beneath a stack of firewood, leaving the courtyard to the silence once again. You climb a narrow wooden ladder to the top of the inner wall, where the view opens up over the rooftops of the lower town. The thatch is silvered with frost, each straw a glittering needle under the fading light of the stars. The chimneys are mostly cold now, though a few still trail a thin blue ribbon of smoke into the still atmosphere. The armory door is bolted tight, but you can see the glint of steel through the narrow window slits where the poleaxes are stacked. The shields hang in rows, their painted heraldry obscured by the murk, yet their presence provides a sense of order. This is the heart of the castle's defense, a room filled with the tools of the trade, resting in the quiet. You walk past the blacksmith's forge, where the giant bellows sit idle, like a pair of lungs at rest. The anvil is a dark silhouette against the grey stone, its surface scarred by the blows of 1,000 hammers. The smell of charcoal and cold iron persists, a lingering memory of the heat and noise that will return with the sunrise. In a corner of the yard, a stone well sits, its bucket resting on the rim as if waiting for a thirsty traveller. You peer into the depths, seeing the reflection of a single star caught in the still water far below. The rope is rough and frayed, a humble tool that has served the castle for more years than any man can remember. The laundry area is a ghost of activity, with long wooden tubs turned upside down to keep out the frost. A single linen shirt, forgotten on a line, has frozen stiff, a pale shape that rattles gently in the breeze. It looks like a sculpture of ice, a transient piece of art, created by the cold and the damp. You move toward the tannery district where the smell changes, becoming sharper and more pungent, even in the freezing cold. The vats are covered with heavy wooden planks to protect the hides from the elements as they soak in their bitter baths. It is a necessary toil, a trade that provides the leather for your boots and the harness for the teams. A narrow bridge of timber crosses the drainage ditch that leads toward the outer moat, its planks creaking under your weight. The wood is slick with moisture, and you walk carefully, keeping one hand on the rough-hewn railing. Below, the water is dark and motionless, a black mirror that hides the secrets of the muddy bottom. You reach the cellar entrance, where the wine and ale are stored, in the cool embrace of the earth. The door is thick oak, reinforced with iron straps, and the smell of fermenting fruit and hops seeps through the cracks. It is a place of plenty, a storehouse of liquid warmth that will be shared at the Lord's table. The falconers' mews are silent, the birds perched on their wooden bars with leather hoods covering their eyes. You can hear the soft rustle of feathers as one bird stirs in its sleep, its talons clicking against the wood. They are predators at rest, their fierce energy contained until the hunt begins at dawn. You pause by the gatehouse winch, a massive construction of oak and iron that controls the drawbridge. The gears are coated in a layer of cold grease, and the smell of old hemp rope fills the small chamber. It takes the strength of 4 men to turn these handles, but now they sit motionless in the dimness. The town's central fountain is a frozen monument, the water captured in mid-fall by the biting grip of the frost. The stone basin is filled with ice, and the carved lion's head looks out over the square with sightless eyes. It is a beautiful, brittle sight, a moment of time frozen in the heart of the community. You look up through the gaps in the battlements, where the merlons create a jagged frame for the heavens above. The stars are beginning to lose their brilliance, as the sky shifts from a deep velvet black to a bruised shade of purple. The longest part of your watch is behind you, and the tempo of the morning is almost within reach. You find a small stone bench tucked into a sheltered nook of the wall, and sit for a brief moment to rest your legs. The silence is profound, a weighted blanket that covers the entire kingdom, from the highest tower to the lowest cellar. You close your eyes for a heartbeat, listening to the pulse of the sleeping town before standing to finish the circuit. The transition toward the final hour is subtle, a slow turn of the wheel that brings the promise of light to the eastern horizon. The chill of the stone bench seeps through your thick woolen cloak as you rise to your feet once more. Your joints feel stiff, a testament to the long hours spent patrolling the ramparts and the biting cold of the winter season. You stretch your arms, hearing the faint click of your shoulders, before adjusting the strap of your lantern. The flame within is burning low, a small flickering amber heart that casts long shadows against the masonry. You turn your steps toward the upper bailey, where the chapel stands as a silent sentinel of faith. The great oak doors are shut tight, but the scent of beeswax and old incense permeates the entryway. It is a smell of peace, a reminder of the prayers offered up during the day, now resting in the stillness. You run a hand over the iron handle, feeling the cold metal, before continuing your path along the inner wall. In the laundry courtyard, the linens hung out to dry have turned into stiff, frozen sculptures. They sway slightly in the breeze, making a dry, scratching noise as they brush against one another. To a weary eye they might look like ghosts, but you know them for what they are, the humble garments of the household. The frost has coated them in a layer of white crystals that sparkle faintly in the dying torchlight. The stables are your next stop, a place of warmth and the smell of dry hay. You can hear the horses shifting in their stalls, their hooves making a muffled thud against the straw-covered floor. Their breath rises in small clouds of steam, visible in the pale light as they dream of open fields and summer grass. One horse snorts softly, a friendly greeting in the quiet, and you pause to pat its velvety nose. You climb the narrow spiral stairs of the highest watchtower, your boots scraping against the worn granite steps. The masonry is cold to the touch, and the atmosphere becomes thinner as you ascend toward the sky. Each step is a measured effort, a familiar climb that you have made many times before. At the top, the wind is stronger, whistling through the narrow arrow slits, with a mournful, hollow tone. From this vantage point, you look out over the valley, where the mist lies like a sea of grey wool. The trees are mere shadows, poking through the fog, and the river is a silver thread that winds through the landscape. The horizon is no longer a hard line, but a soft bleeding edge of indigo and violet. It is the moment between two states of being where the earth waits for the first touch of the sun. Descending back to the main level, you pass the entrance to the kitchens where the first signs of life are appearing. A single candle flickers on a wooden table, and you hear the scrape of a flint as a fire is coaxed into life. The smell of wood smoke is faint but growing, a promise of the heat that will soon fill the large room. It is a comforting scent, one that speaks of breakfast and the end of your long duty. Inside, the baker is already at work, his hands white with the dust of sifted flour. He moves with a quiet purpose, kneading the dough on a thick wooden board with a steady, measured cadence. The noise of the dough being turned is a soft, wet thud that blends with the crackle of the kindling. He nods to you, a silent acknowledgement between two souls who work while the rest of the kingdom sleeps. You walk toward the gatehouse where the relief guard is beginning to stir in their small stone chamber. The smell of stale ale and old wool fills the room as the men stretch and yawn away their slumber. They move slowly, their movements hampered by the lingering weight of sleep as they reach for their spears and cloaks. You feel a sense of kinship with them, the passing of the torch from one watchman to the next. The exchange is brief and quiet, a few whispered words about the state of the walls and the silence of the woods. You hand over the iron key, its face worn smooth by years of use, and feel the burden lift from your shoulders. Your duty is done, the town is safe, and the transition to the day is nearly complete. The relief guard takes his place, his eyes scanning the horizon as you turn toward the barracks. The walk back is shorter than it was at the start of the evening, or perhaps your feet simply know the way home. The cobblestones are slick with a fine layer of dew, reflecting the bruised colors of the pre-dawn sky. You pass the well, where the wooden bucket hangs motionless, suspended over the dark water below. The town is still dreaming, but the pulse of the morning is beginning to thrum through the streets. Inside the barracks, the atmosphere is thick with the scent of pine needles and wood smoke. You find your cot, a simple frame of timber with a straw-filled mattress that feels more inviting than a king's bed. You sit on the edge, the wood creaking under your weight as you begin the slow process of unbuckling your leather harness. Each piece of equipment is set aside with a metallic clink that sounds loud in the quiet room. You pull off your boots, feeling the sudden rush of warmth as your feet are freed from their leather cages. The woolen socks are damp, and you rub your toes, feeling the blood return to the chilled skin. You lay your cloak over the foot of the bed, a final layer of protection against the draught that sneaks through the window. The straw rustles as you lie down, a dry, papery whisper that signals the end of your journey. The ceiling above is a map of shadows, created by the faint light filtering through the high rafters. You watch as the grey turns to a soft, pearlescent white, the herald of the coming morning. Your eyes feel weighted, the lids pressing down with a gentle insistence that you can no longer resist. The noises of the castle, the distant bark of a dog, the clatter of a pail become a distant murmur. You think of the circuit you have walked, the many steps taken in the service of the town's peace. Every gate checked, every shadow investigated, every flickering candle noted in your mind. It is a quiet pride, a job well done, that allows your mind to finally release its hold on the era. The tension in your muscles dissolves, melting away into the straw as you find your own stillness. The sky outside is now a pale, watery blue, the color of a robin's egg. The stars have all but vanished, swallowed up by the increasing light as the sun prepares to crest the hills. You can hear the first birds beginning to sing, their clear, sharp notes cutting through the morning haze. It is a beautiful melody, a song of renewal that marks the beginning of a new cycle. Your breathing slows, matching the steady measure of the sleeping barracks as you drift toward the shore of sleep. The images of the watch, the frozen fountain, the silent mews, the glowing embers begin to blur and fade. They become the fabric of your dreams, a tapestry of stone and shadow that will keep you company in the hours of rest. You are no longer the watcher, but one of the watched, protected by the men now on the wall. The warmth of the blankets is a cocoon, shielding you from the persisting chill of the stone walls. You tuck your hands under your chin, feeling the softness of the wool against your weathered skin. The kingdom of the day, with its noise and its bustle, feels like a distant country, one that you have no need to visit just yet. Your landscape is here, in the quiet, in the soft embrace of the morning. The final lantern in the hallway is extinguished, and the smell of the wick remains for a moment before being carried away. The silence is complete, a profound and holy thing that rests over the barracks like a benediction. You let out a long, slow breath, a sigh of contentment that marks the final moment of your long vigil. The watch is over, and the rest you have earned is finally yours to take. As the first ray of sunlight touches the peak of the highest tower, you slip away into a deep and dreamless slumber. The town wakes, the fires are lit, and the life of the castle moves forward into the brilliance of the day. But for you, the quiet hours persist for a little longer, a peaceful sanctuary of shadow and stone. You sleep soundly, knowing that you have kept the peace through the longest hours of the night. Thank you for walking through history with me tonight. Until next time on Quiet History, sleep well.